Hi, I'm Mike Gilliam. Science and You starts now.
Hi, I'm Ernabel Demillo. Long-lasting love, is it real? And is there a science behind everlasting love? Coming up, we'll open up our hearts ahead on Science and You.
I'm Anne Riddell. Why are we attracted to one person and not another? Why do we sometimes stay in relationships that aren't good for us? Today we take a closer look at why people do what they do when it comes to love. That's ahead on Science and You.
I'm Mike Gilliam. City noise, it's a big problem for all of us, but research is showing it's an even bigger problem for urban birds, making it difficult for them to communicate and find true love. In just a minute, we'll look at the problem on Science and You.
Hi, I am Marlene Peralta. Do you know that owning a pet just like Pepper can improve your life? I'll tell you ahead on Science and You.
I'm Donna Hanover. If you're a wounded veteran, a disabled child, a person that's been traumatized in a crime or an accident, there may be help to be had not just in a hospital or a pharmacy, but from our friends in the animal kingdom. Right, Russell? That's ahead on Science and You.
Hi, I'm Beth Kovetz. Why is the internet so important to us? What keeps it growing? According to Clay Shirky, the internet runs on love. Ahead on Science and You.
Hi, I'm Ernabel Demillo. When it comes to love, are you a romantic like me? Or does everlasting love only happen in fairy tales? And more importantly, is there a scientific formula behind happily ever after? All of us are passionate about love in one form or another, from our families and friends to our pets and favorite things. But for many, the search for enduring love is eternal. But when it does happen, everyone wants to know the secret.
It's a richer, deeper feeling now because you're so young and everything was so new. It was, the excitement of being on your own for the first time and doing everything as an adult on your own for the first time. That's different than when you're already entrenched in the marriage. And I think each little bump you go through, be it illness or the death of a parent, kind of works to enrich you. You get through the bump and then the bond is stronger. Do you know what I'm saying?
I could see that. Yeah.
And it really worked for us.
For Lori and Marvin Mayerson, soon to celebrate 50 years of marriage, they found the secret of what works for them. But is love really about science?
With the intense, long-term in love subjects, when they looked at their partner versus various controls in the scanner, we saw the same basic pattern of neural activation as we saw with the newly in love subjects, which was this strong activation in the ventral tegmental area, the caudate, the dopamine reward area.
Dr. Arthur Aron recently completed a study at Stony Brook University. The report found that the parts of the brain associated with reward showed elevated readings when a picture of a loved one was shown.
The central system in the long term and the short term in love subjects is known as the dopamine reward system. It consists centrally of the ventral tegmental area and the caudate and some related areas, and they're tightly connected and physically close to each other. And those are the areas that are associated with dopamine, which is a chemical that is associated with great reward and excitement and looking forward to getting things.
Dr. Aron sees a few keys to long-term romantic success.
Why is it that a tiny number of couples after 20 years still can have that kind of excitement and expected reward? We don't know for sure yet. We know a lot, though, about, in general, what makes couples that have been together a while more rewarded, more exciting, and probably that's true of these. So one thing is if the couple is doing exciting, challenging things together that they associate with the partner. Another thing is if they are celebrating each other's successes. So these are two of the main things.
And Dr. Aron does see a practical application to his research.
The fact that some people claim to be intensely in love after 20, 30 years, and our data provide pretty strong support that that's a reality, should be an inspiration and a motivation for people to want to make their relationships as powerful as possible. Powerful in the sense of fulfilling and satisfying and passionate. That it's not hopeless, that there really is a possibility, that everybody doesn't have to go downhill.
For the Mayersons, time has only strengthened their bond and their love.
We started very young, so we kind of grew together, whereas when you marry so much later, as some of the people do today, 38, 40, 42, you are much more your own person. So you've already grown in a direction. Maybe it's harder to compromise. I don't know. I think we did it a healthy way.
She's my best friend.
Yeah, we are best friends. That's
as well
true.
as my
we are
lover.
Definitely
She's
best
my best friend.
Yes.
And
that's a wonderful thing. I think sometimes when I see some of the marriages today, I don't see that. That you care about each other so much.
Marvin, are your feelings just as strong now as they were when you first fell in love?
They most certainly are. Absolutely. In fact, today it may even be stronger because we've been together so long, we depend on each other for so many things, and we're together more than we were ever together before.
So will science make for longer and deeper relationships? Well, as we've seen, no matter the age, love can last a lifetime, and science is beginning to prove that. I'm Ernabel Demillo for Science and You.
Falling in love can induce a calming effect in the body and mind and raise levels of nerve growth factor for about a year, which helps to restore the nervous system while improving the lover's memory.
I'm Anne Riddell. For a lot of us, love can feel mysterious. What makes us choose one partner instead of another? Why do some relationships last and others end? Today we take a closer look at what's behind the choices we make when it comes to love. Mollie and Morty have been married for 70 years, but get them talking about their first kiss, and they still giggle.
When did you kiss me for the first time?
When did I kiss you? I guess I kissed you goodnight the first night I took you out.
So what's their relationship advice?
Never go to bed mad.
Never angry at each other.
Dr. Claudia Brumbaugh of Queens College studies adult attachment theory. She explains the spark that brings couples together isn't necessarily what keeps them together.
The thinking is at the beginning of relationships, we experience passionate love. It's also known as limerence.
Limerence?
Limerence.
It sounds like something.
It does. So at the beginning, that's thought to be the glue that brings us together, the initial spark, that attraction, that passionate love. And over time, that love changes and turns more into a companionate love where we have less of a fire for each other, but it keeps us together for a more long-term relationship.
But love can also be fickle, and that brings us to another topic Dr. Brumbaugh has researched.
The rebound relationship. Who among us has not had a rebound at some point or another? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it somewhere in between?
Well, most people would think that it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
That it's not good to jump from relationship to relationship before your feelings about your ex have been resolved. But surprisingly, even though everyone seems to have an idea about rebounds, not much research has been done on it at all. What I found was that it's kind of good, actually, to rebound and to do it quickly. People who had rebounded had more self-confidence and greater well-being. And the faster they got into their next relationship, the better.
Of course, love is not an exact science. Intuition plays its part, the feeling that somehow we just know. Char is a psychic medium and author of the book Love Karma.
So what I'm trying to do is teach people to trust that first gut feeling so they don't waste time in their lives. Although, sometimes we need to have that experience. Sometimes we need to go through the hardship so that we can appreciate the good things when they come.
Char says we have inner wisdom to guide us. The problem is we don't always listen to it.
Our desires get in the way. Our desires can get in the way. You know, I mean, I know people who have married for money and they pay for it the rest of their lives.
And when love has left town, Char's suggestion, get moving.
You talk about the big cleanup.
When you go, when you move out of a relationship.
Yeah, when you move
moving.
out of a relationship, you should just move out lock, stock, and barrel. You should, anything that reminds you of that person, if their energy is attached to it, get rid of it.
No doubt, the rules of attraction can be tricky and different for men and women, a topic debated as long as people have dated.
Women care about looks, but not as much as men. Women have more variability in what they're attracted to, too. So men agree more on what is attractive in mates, and women have more variability.
Beyond attraction, what helps love last? Herman Solomon is 101 years old. His wife, Bertha, is 100. The unscientific evidence based on these two, a sense of humor seems to matter.
We'll be married 79 years on June the 3rd, 2012.
We're antiques.
That's what she calls it.
It's often said every generation believes it invented love and romance. But of course, as we know, love has been around as long as we have, forcing people throughout history to learn and relearn its painful but wonderful lessons. I'm Anne Riddell for Science and You.
According to mathematical theory, we should date a dozen people before choosing a long-term partner. That provides the best chance you'll make a successful love match.
I'm Mike Gilliam. Do you ever find yourself on a corner where you couldn't communicate because it was too noisy? Or maybe in a nightclub where you see the object of your affection, but you can't talk to that person because the music is just too loud? Well, it turns out that's a problem for urban birds each and every day.
We think of this as a normal part of city life, but for birds attempting to communicate through song, it's interference. David Krause is an assistant biology professor at CUNY's Borough of Manhattan Community College, who studies ecology and birds.
So we're talking love in February. What about birds, though? Is it more difficult for them in an urban environment? I keep hearing that the noise is a problem for them.
The urban environment is, evolutionarily speaking, new to birds. And they've adapted to it in a variety of different ways. They've changed the way they sing. There are a number of studies in Europe and North America showing that the frequency of bird songs in urban environments is different from the frequency of bird songs in rural environments because the ambient noise conditions are quite different. It's not just that there's city noise here and there's not city noise there. For instance, cars, traffic, a helicopter just flew over us, things like that. But just the fact that there are all the buildings around with their highly reflective surfaces, the glass walls and stone walls, as opposed to trees. Sound is reflected and absorbed very differently in these different environments. And as a result, bird songs have changed to accommodate those differences.
How have they changed?
Technically speaking, when a bird calls, when a bird sings, or a person, the frequency changes over the course of the statement, if you want to consider a bird song a statement. Here I am, please come be my mate. But as the frequency changes from low to high, it turns out that in urban environments, in general, the low end is not as low as the low end in a rural environment. So they lose the low frequencies because they don't transmit as well in the urban setting.
I hear that helicopter going over.
Is
that exactly what we're talking about,
It's exactly
right?
the kind of thing we're talking about. That makes noise and that drowns out the bird song.
And I noticed that I started to talk louder to try to reach it. I think I probably changed my pitch. Is that what's going on?
You may well have. That's exactly what we're talking about, right? And we all do it without thinking about it. You know, truck goes by, helicopter goes by, ambulances go by, you'll stop the conversation you're having with the person you're walking down the street with, or naturally raise your volume to compensate for it. And you don't think about it. It's just it's inbuilt, and birds do the same thing.
And I noticed that right now we've changed. We've toned it down.
We come back down because the helicopter's gone. Exactly right.
Wow, very good illustration.
But there's more. While we may not notice it, there are subtle differences in the songs birds of the same species sing.
You know, you think a bird song's a bird song. Song sparrow's a song sparrow, field sparrow's a field sparrow. But birds have accents just like people do. You know, you go down to South Carolina and people talk funny down there. Or you go up to Canada and they say A every other word. But birds do the same thing because birds learn their song from their parents. And so if their parents sound a little different, they sound a little different. So you get regional accents with birds. And what we're seeing is that now there's an urban accent that they have separate from the rural accent. The birds vocalize for a number of different reasons. When it comes to singing, what we really think of as song, the reason they're singing is primarily to attract a mate. But that's a two-sided coin. When a male bird sings and says, "Here I am, this is where I live, don't you want to come mate with me?" he's simultaneously saying that to the girls, the females, and to the other male birds, he's saying, "Here I am, this is my territory, go find your own, stay away."
So bottom line, how does all of this noise affect mating?
Would it make it more difficult for them to mate with, say, a bird from out in the sticks?
It might, but it's probably not relevant because they're in the city. You know, it's birds in the city with other birds in the city who are basically speaking the same language, have the same accent.
It's too soon to tell where all of this will go, but one thing is clear. We noisy humans are making it very difficult for birds to sing the songs they need to sing to find that perfect mate. I'm Mike Gilliam for Science and You.
I am Marlene Peralta. The bond between humans and animals have existed for centuries, making it perhaps the most important friendship in history. Experts agree that the benefits from these mutual interactions are priceless. Animal behaviorist Peter Voschel says the similarities between humans and animals are endless.
We're social and dogs are social, so we all live in groups. We don't do well sort of as hermits, and that gives us a base of commonality. And dogs, you know, they like being with groups of people, and they probably started off coming to us for food, hanging around settlements and encampments for the leftovers. And then we found them to be helpful. They'd bark, alert us when the enemies would come, and they would keep us warm in the winter, somebody to play with. So it was a mutual interaction from the beginning.
Humans' fascination for animals keeps on growing. In fact, the latest National Pet Owner Survey reveals that almost 72 million households own a pet. Humane Society animal consultant and trainer Bill Berloni has a unique perspective on why that bond continues to happen.
I've been training animals for 30 years now, and I had a dog growing up. And you know, dogs and cats are particularly good because they'll live with humans. You know, they're one of the two species that have actually been domesticated and will live with us. And you know, I feel that in our hectic society, you know, what animals give us is unconditional love. And so I think we're drawn to that as humans, you know, coming home and having a companion that we can talk to, that we know won't treat us like another human, but just give us the good emotional feeling.
And those emotional feelings come with no judgment.
Now, Willis does not know that, you know, the sweater is new, or that I got my hair done, or a makeover, or whatever. He doesn't care. I could be in curlers and, you know, cold cream. It doesn't matter. They just see you. And I always tell kids, wouldn't it be nice if we could just treat our classmates like our dogs treat us for just 5 minutes a day? You don't judge anybody for what they own or what they look like or whatever. You just see them.
Animals have been part of our lives from the beginning of time.
There's been a lot of years for it to develop. We know for pretty much of a fact that dogs have been domesticated and living with people for at least 15,000 years. And there's some evidence, maybe a little controversial, that it might be as long as 100 or 150,000 years. So that's a lot of generations for dogs and for us to sort of get mutually compatible.
But do pets benefit as much as we do from this bond?
3 square meals a day, or 2, or maybe 1, a place to sleep, which is very comfortable, usually right next to us, and companionship, what's not to like?
Even those in the animal science profession can take advantage of that unbreakable friendship.
The human-animal bond is one of the cornerstones of our profession. And in fact, there's a group I'm associated with called the Association for Veterinary Family Practice. And one of the reasons that we emphasize the concept of family practice is that veterinary technology and veterinary medicine are not fields for people who like animals and don't like people. Because you know what? The dog doesn't drive himself to the vet. And the cat doesn't come up to you and say, you know, I'm due for vaccines. The relationship between the human and the animal are what drives how well the animal's taken care of.
For those professionals working with shelter animals like Berloni, that human-animal bond is what he looks for when matching his animals with a new family.
We're matchmakers. these poor creatures have already been abandoned once by humankind. So we try to make the match that's going to be forever. If you're looking for a boyfriend, you wouldn't walk into the first bar on the corner, sit down next to a guy and marry him. Unfortunately, a lot of people do that. They'll go into a pet shop and they'll be visually drawn to a puppy, whether it's right for them or not. And we try to educate the people as to what the right dog is for their life. So it's a forever match.
All experts agree that education is the key to make this bond work. Places like Humane Society use education to make a happy match for all the animals they have available for adoption. For Science and You, I am Marlene Peralta.
I'm Donna Hanover. Doctors and nurses, physical therapists, and medical equipment engineers all marshal their scientific efforts to try to help people who are facing disabilities and injuries. Sometimes they find their best results. The most effective way to help people back to health and independence is with a smart assistant from the animal world. Right, guys?
Students from the Children's Village campus in Dobbs Ferry, New York, take on a very important learning assignment. They regularly groom and help train dogs like these, preparing these remarkable animals for a life of service to human partners with special needs. This is the headquarters of Educated Canines Assisting with Disabilities, or ECAD for short.
The dogs learn basic obedience training, like just heeling, sitting, laying down, being patient. By teaching a dog to be patient, you have to learn to be patient yourself.
Dale Picard, along with his wife Lou, founded ECAD in 1995, and they have placed specialized service dogs in more than a dozen states.
Dale, what is it about a dog's nature that makes it such a great companion for somebody that's disabled?
The dogs become a great companion for somebody that's disabled because they're in tune with a person's emotions. So it doesn't matter what is happening on the inside of yourself, whether you can read it or not, the dog knows how to read it.
And we now know that these dogs can do a lot more than just read emotions. Their intuitive sense can actually save lives.
And how about people with diabetes?
We promote our dogs to lick the person's hand. So we have several dogs out there alerting their clients to low blood sugars.
The dog
just licks their hand
to see if anything is wrong.
No, the body chemistry has changed, so the dog will lick excessively until you get yourself back on track.
And who is this?
Rosie is my personal dog. She was born in my hands.
Rosie received national attention recently when she was allowed into a courtroom to calm a young rape victim who was afraid of facing her alleged assailant.
Rosie took away all the stress. Rosie got up and nudged her and comforted her, absorbing all the stress that was coming out of the child by leaning into her.
Once placed in a permanent home, these animals act as part service dog, turning lights on and off, retrieving dropped items, even helping out around the kitchen. As therapy animals, they can calm autistic children or wake their masters from recurring nightmares. Watch how Russell responds to Dale's troubled sleep. For some, a service dog helps soothe post-traumatic stress and simply makes life bearable once again. Phil Bauer is a combat vet who lost a leg in 2003 when his helicopter was shot down in Iraq.
My feet were trapped underneath the roof housing. The rear end where I was trapped kind of went up in an explosion and fire.
Phil's life back home was a mess until Reese answered a call to duty himself and now serves as Phil's therapy service dog and full-time companion.
And what does Reese do for you?
Reese does anything from reminding me to take my meds in the morning to being able to turn the lights on and off for me if I'm in bed and I don't have my leg on. Just being there and actually allowing me to almost go into public. Reese is really great at being able to understand and pick up on my moods even before I even understand it.
Phil says that working with these kids gives dogs a baseline on understanding what they'll need to do to calm the anxieties of their human clients. Avril Lindsay Dennis is Director of Mental Health Programs at Children's Village and works closely with young people and the dogs of ECAD.
Has there been science to prove that therapy animals really do the job?
Absolutely. It's been an incredibly difficult field to track scientifically, and it's been a challenge that those of us in the field have really been looking at over the last 10 years. We've done a variety of things, including partnering with outside agencies like the Humane Society and SPCAs in looking at the human-animal bond and interactions. Most hospitals have therapy programs at this point. People want to get involved.
It's because there's been scientific proof that it works that these organizations are saying we want it.
Right. Right. It's no longer sort of going in and having to convince people that this works.
It does work because at the core of the human-animal bond, there is love. And love is one of the strongest bonds we can share.
Honestly, I can't answer where my life would be without him.
Sometimes therapy animals provide temporary assistance, and sometimes it's a lifelong bond. In any case, the science of training animals to help people and scientifically measuring how valuable they really are has advanced tremendously. I'm Donna Hanover for Science and You.
Hi, I'm Beth Kovetz for Science and You. What keeps the internet growing, and why is it so central to our lives? According to Clay Shirky, the internet runs on love.
Mm-hmm.
How does such a modern device run on such ancient fuel?
The big change here is really the cost of doing something generous. When something's very expensive, we won't be terribly generous with it because it costs us so much to offer that generosity. Once something becomes incredibly cheap, we're willing to share it around. One of the things that was really incredibly expensive in the 20th century was sharing information, making information public, saying things out in the public sphere. And in the 21st century, it's gotten incredibly cheap to do that. And so people are willing to make videos and put up photos and write and sing and anything else people want to do and just share it because the cost of that sharing is so low. So when you look around at what's available on the internet, a literally unprecedented amount of it is there because people love to do what they're doing.
In his latest book, Cognitive Surplus, Shirky sees our love affair with the internet driving us all to act more cooperatively and more creatively.
The stuff that's been good at groups hasn't been good at conversation, and the stuff that's been good at conversation hasn't been good at groups. And what the internet does is it creates a medium that's genuinely good at communication among groups of people. And that then becomes a platform for coordinated voluntary participation, right? For the idea of a large group of people coming together and building something together. You look at open source software, you look at Wikipedia, you look at these sort of very large examples that everyone can see. Underneath all of them are thousands and thousands of little projects where people are just coming together and saying, we want to build architectural models out of Lego, or we want to build a map of political violence in Kenya, right? It goes from these kinds of extremes of, it seems like just self-amusement, to, oh, this could actually change the life of the country, all using the same basic tools.
And those tools are inexpensive.
Exactly. And when you, I mean, one of the sort of 101 principles of economics is that when you lower the cost of something people want to do, you get more of that thing. And one of the things that human beings want to do is to be around each other, both just for the social pleasure of it, but also because we've got goals that we can only attack in groups. And when a group can be both satisfying and effective, when I get some pleasure out of working with like-minded individuals and also we can see progress, people will walk through plate glass walls for that experience.
This has been Beth Kovetz for Science and You.
That's our show for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Gilliam. See you next time on Science and You.